Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the Dungeon Master Screen Dungeon Kit. This is the latest accessory to come out for the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game, or at least the latest version of the DM screen. This is the second in the, I guess you'd call it like the environmental series of DM screens, because last year I think it was, we had the wilderness screen come out, and that was actually a really nice one. Had some really nice extras that was included in here. So this is going to be along those lines, and I can't wait to see what we've got inside here. Just taking a quick look on the back. It gives you just a little bit of information about what's included here. So we obviously have the screen itself, the four-paneled, what they call landscape DM screen. But we also have a dry erase sheet featuring the actions you can take in combat on one side and a numbered grid for drawing dungeon maps on the other. 36 geomorph cards, perfect for dealing a random dungeon layout with interlocking map sections. 27 reference cards to track conditions, initiative, and more, and a box to hold all the cards together. So let's just go ahead and open this right up. And off the bat, I love the purple coloration here. Purple's my favorite color, and this is like my favorite shade of purple. So that's really nice to see. I love that. Then on the flap here, it just gives you, again, some idea of what's included. We got the condition cards, initiative, geomorphs, and the numbered grid. So we'll just move this out of the way. We'll save the screen itself for last, and we'll do these sort of accessories first. So the first one that we've got here is the actions in combat. So this is the dry erase double-sided one here. Again, everything you can do in a round. So actions. So this doesn't include like moving or stuff like that. This is just what is considered to be an action in combat. And then it lets you know sort of other activity you can do on your turn. And then on this side, though, we've got our numbered grid. I'm not quite sure necessarily why they put the numbers on there, but just having the grid can be helpful if you want your players to sort of, follow along and create their own map as you go through. This could be helpful. It's not quite 1 inch square, but you could also use it as like a really crude way of including minis. So you could just draw sort of like the overall like size of the room, and they could use their minis to sort of represent roughly where they are in combat. So there's a couple different things you can do with that, but it's still a nice inclusion to have just the same. All right, so here we have our condition cards. So we've got the artwork for all of the conditions on one side. And I love the invisible one there. And then just what the condition is on the other. So that makes sense. Then we've also got the brown mold, green slime, and yellow mold. So these aren't like normal conditions, but these are hazards you can encounter while dungeoneering. So it sort of lets you know essentially what they look like, what they do, how what can harm them, or things that you may not want to do. Like for example, you never want to bring fire around brown mold. So it does sort of mention that. And there was actually one really cool adventure. I think it was actually in the Age of Worms from Dungeon Magazine, where they had this like underground location that had like this cold storage, and what they used for cold storage was brown mold in a box, and it just literally sucked the heat from the surrounding environment in the room to sort of refrigerate everything. I think that's kind of neat. So I've always been a fan of brown mold, and I also remember an encounter years ago where a player threw a fireball at a patch of brown mold, and that just really did not go well. But again, awesome stuff. Then we've got our initiative cards. So these are basically what happens in, once you determine the initiative order, everyone rolls, whoever gets the highest one, you basically give them, the number 1 card and then the next highest, right? You sort of give them these cards so they know what their initiative turn order is. And it can also, like for me, it would help me keep track as well, because like once we know, who previously went, what I would recommend is they just sort of have the card out on the table, and when they've completed their turn, they just sort of tap it sideways, so you know that they're done. That's how I would do it anyway, because there have been situations where I've had groups large enough where it's been difficult to keep, initiative straight. So this is something that would come in really handy for that. And again, you got some really nice artwork there. This is probably artwork similar to what's going to be on the screen itself, Like I can see like the hooked horrors there and on the screen off to the side here as well. But it is really nice artwork as well, so I'm not too upset with that. All right, we got our Geomorphs, but on the bottom of that we have our deck box for all the cards included. You just punch it out, fold it up, and put the cards inside there. Again, I'm not going to do that at this point in time. I'm sort of in collector mode still, so I'm just going to try to keep all these as pristine as possible until such a time where I might end up using these. But then we've also got these Dungeon Geomorph cards, and oh man, okay. So these are actually really nice. So these are maps done by Dyson Logos, who has been doing a lot of the maps for 5th edition for the last couple of years. And I really have come to respect and appreciate his particular style here. These are really nice. And so what you can do with these is you can sort of again, just sort of separate them, and then you can sort of deal them out or just lay them out to create a random dungeon. And what's interesting about these is that they all have, every single one of these it looks like, so we'll go through each one. But as you can see just from this sheet alone, each of these cards, like if you can see sort of where the line separates them, they have these narrow hallways going out in the middle of all 4 sides of the card. So the bottom, the sides, the top. So again, you could just lay these out in any way and sort of make them connect with one another. So I think that's actually a really smart design. And I think it'd be kind of fun to actually do a random dungeon with these, because you've got situations where like this section is completely sealed off or separate from everything else up here. So you would need to have a card below it to sort of connect it. And then you could have some that sort of comes around, and I think it's actually a really neat design. So I actually really like that. So there's the first sheet. Then we got the second one here. Again, just really nice designs. This is something I think would be a lot of fun to work with. So that might be a video in the future if you guys are interested. I might deal out like X number of cards and just try to create a random dungeon and see what we come up with. So again, just really nice like designs in the maps. I'm really impressed by that. All right, so those were the extras. So what we're just going to do is we're going to sort of move all this off to the side, and then we're going to take a look at the screen itself. So let's start with the side that faces out towards the players, the art side. We're just going to do the two, like the middle panels first. So here we've got, again, some really nice artwork here. I'm assuming that must be like a deep dragon, because it doesn't look like a regular blue dragon or anything like that, but sort of like a Dungeoneer Underdark sort of like feel to it. You got like the mushrooms, and so that might be a deep dragon. But what's also really cool is you got the hooked horrors, and I loved hooked horrors, and I don't think they get used enough, so it's awesome to see them. And then you've got the adventurers out there getting ready to confront these hooked horrors. The crystal structures look really nice. Just really impressive art overall. Like, I'm really kind of blown away by the quality of the artwork there. And again, it's also nice and colorful too. My biggest complaint with the Dungeon Master screen Reincarnated is that it was basically just different shades of red. And I didn't like that too much, but these ones have been really nice and colorful. So here's one of the outside panels. So this looks like the entrance to some sort of subterranean, dungeon or like fortress or citadel or something. You've got the door with the arcane runes on it. Again, the crystals, some pools of liquid, the mushrooms. Just again, really, really nice art. And then you do have an outdoor scene that actually looks like it connects to this here, maybe. Yeah, it looks like it connects to that. But you've also got like this really awesome, menacing looking blue dragon, and what might be like an elven city possibly there. Just again, really, really cool stuff. So I'm really surprised by the quality of the artwork, and pleasantly surprised. All right, so inside, the middle screens are taken up largely by the conditions. That's kind of a standard for the DM screens. I'll talk more about that in a moment, what I think of that. It's useful information to have for sure, so it makes sense for it to be on a screen. I'll sort of circle back to that. We also have on the outside panel here, it looks like information for setting a DC, so setting a difficulty class. Oh, sort of move some of the stuff here. So setting a DC, monster motivation. So you got like these random goals that a creature might have, which is actually kind of neat. I like that. So they can like find a sanctuary, conquer the dungeon, seek an item, slay a rival, hide from enemies, recover from a battle. So that'd be a neat one. Avoid danger or seek wealth. So kind of that's a really cool little chart to have, and something that for like random encounters, I would love to roll on that as well, and give them a little bit more depth or motivation behind them. Damage severity by level again is just good to have. You've got 3 different levels of, I guess you'd call them severity, and the party, like the player character levels. So if you just want them to be set back by something, characters levels 1 through 4. Whatever the damage thing that you're doing to them could do a D10. Dangerous would be 2D10, or if you wanted it to be deadly, you could roll 4D10. And I kind of like seeing the deadly one on there, because one of the things that a lot of people have said about 5e is that it is a little bit slanted towards players, and like deadly consequences are kind of few and far between. So I do like seeing that there. Improvising damage. This is also really cool as well. So you got different levels of these type of damage of the dice that you roll for it. So going from 1d10 all the way up to 24d10, and some examples of what they may be. So 1d10 could be burned by coals, hit by a falling bookcase, or pricked by poison needle. Or like 24d10 could be tumbling into a vortex of fire on the elemental plane of fire, or being crushed in the jaws of a godlike creature or moon-sized monster. So that's pretty rough, but I like that. I like the creativity in that chart. Then we have object armor class, so the different substances, how hard they are to inflict damage upon, and what their hit points might be. Skills and associated abilities. So this for me is actually kind of good to have because I'm running so many, or like sort of bouncing back and forth between different editions of D&D and other D20 based role-playing games. So one of the things that's really difficult for me to keep straight in my head is what skills are associated with what system. So this for me, like I know a lot of people are like, you don't need that. I need this. This is probably the thing I would reference the most if I was using this screen, truth be told. And then we've got just long jump, high jump, suffocating, concentration, and exhaustion. So that's, again, pretty standard stuff, but it's useful to have because you don't necessarily use it all the time. But it's one of those things that it's used infrequently enough that, like, for example, I don't really have it committed to memory. So this will save me from having to look up when the situations do come into play. So that's good to have. And again, we have our conditions. But then we also have, this is another really cool chart as well. So we have State of Ruin. So whenever you're designing a dungeon area, you can roll on this chart to see what it is. So there could be Perilous. So that's like if you roll a 1 on the d6 for State of Ruin. So that could be a situation where you may want to try to avoid it unless you want to face at least a little peril. There's Crumbling, Neglected, Abandoned, Secure, and Thriving. Dungeon Encounters. So this isn't a conventional encounter table where it just gives you like the monsters and maybe breaks it out by some of the CRs. So this chart, you basically roll a d6, and the options are like if you roll a 1, you can find a lone powerful creature, and what it essentially tells you is to pick a creature, whatever creature you think fits, but it has to be a challenge rating 1 to 3 higher than the rest of the party, like the party average or whatever the player characters are, assuming that they're all the same level. So you would sort of want them to be at least 1 to 3 higher, and some motivation as to why it's there. If you roll 2 through 4 on the chart, it is hostile creatures. So you choose multiple creatures, or selecting 5 with a challenge rating equal to the level of the player characters, and they're either monsters native to the dungeon or they're explorers themselves. Or if you roll a 5, you could come across a patch of brown mold, green slime, or yellow mold. And then if you roll a 6, you can actually find a group of friendly explorers across the player character's path. The explorers have 2d4 goods for sale that cost 1 gold piece or less, which you select from the adventure and gear table in the player's handbook. So, that could be, again, kind of useful to have. The last panel has the dungeon chambers. So if you're creating a dungeon and you want to assign a purpose to each room, then you can just roll on the chamber on the chart here, or you can just look on the chart and try to piece ones together that make sense. So I actually kind of like having this because I'm not great with like remembering some of the names of things, or like trying, if I'm just writing the adventure out, I like to try to name each room. So having this at at the ready, I think would come in pretty handy there. So I do like that chart as well. Then we have travel pace, cover, light sources, obscurement, and tracking DCs. We've got foraging DCs, food, drink, and lodging, audible distance, and then we've got visibility condition for like visibility outdoors. Considering that this is like the dungeon kit, I think that this is probably the most like this is the one that sort of stands out as that maybe shouldn't necessarily be there. Something I think might be a little bit more useful is how far, like a torch light, like different light sources, how far away they could be seen in like an Underdark cavern. I think something like that might be a little bit better to have on there than outdoor visibility, because like that's like outdoor visibility makes more sense to be on the wilderness kit. I think it was. So it's kind of weird that it's here, but it's also like a super small part of the screen itself. So it does feel out of place, but it also feels kind of nitpicky considering how little real estate it actually takes up. And you can maybe try to use that for like some inspiration if you're doing like underground or underdark stuff as well. Maybe, I guess. But I think like being able to see light sources in the underdark and the ranges might have been a little bit better there. But yeah, overall though, it's still a really nice screen. Like I love the artwork, and there is some really cool stuff on here. The stuff that is sort of new or unique to this screen. Like I love the improvising damage. I love the state of ruin and dungeon encounters and dungeon chambers charts. I think that those are great. Truthfully, with the conditions, like I understand why they're there. It is a part of the 5e. It's something that does come up quite frequently. So it makes sense that you have sort of what they do at the ready as well. But I will say we also have the cards, and sure, you give the cards out to the players, but you don't necessarily need to, right? You could just have the card on you and be able to use that as the resource. So I think this section here, truthfully, could have been a little bit better served by having maybe some of the information or charts for like designing dungeons randomly from the DMG. I think maybe that might have been a little bit better to have on this section here because you have the cards, right? Like if you didn't have the cards, then sure, have the conditions on there. I think it makes sense. But I think that this is a section that really could have been used for like random dungeon generation charts of some form or another. They could be like hazards. They could be like they could be hazards, traps, encounters, or again, like charts for that you roll on to determine like the layout of a random dungeon. So I think that this section could have been a little bit better used, in my opinion, because of the cards, but it's still useful information to have on there. And, my opinion obviously is going to be the same as everybody's. It's just personally what I would have liked to have seen on there instead. But it's still, like I said, useful stuff. And if, I'm also looking at this as someone who has all of the 5th edition DM screens already, right? But not everyone's in that situation. So if this is your first DM screen that you're looking to pick up, it's a good one. Like I think there's a lot of great stuff on here. And anytime you get tools to help you improvise anything, I think it is just, a super great thing to have, because it just, it makes you more comfortable doing it, seeing it right on the screen there and being able to utilize that. So I think that that's a good, definitely a good thing. So again, if you don't have a screen already, or this is your first one, or you're looking for something to upgrade from one of the previous ones, this is definitely a good screen. Just because there are things that I would have changed on it doesn't mean that that's the way that everyone needs to think. Just my own personal opinion, which is what the video is supposed to be here. But my favorite thing about this entire kit has to be the geomorphs, like just the extras that are included. And a few years ago, when they were putting out like the regular DM screen and the DM screen reincarnated, one of the things that I really didn't like was the fact that it didn't feel like you were getting your money's worth from the screen. But with these kits and these extras and just the amount of time I could save myself when I'm trying to create dungeons myself, using these just to like deal them out randomly and see what I can come up with, That's a huge time saver. It's a great tool and resource, and it definitely, makes you feel like this kit is well worth the money. Like the initiative cards are cool as well. The dry erase, grid that you can, draw dungeon maps on or use for minis in a pinch. The game aid for the actions in combat, like all that stuff is great. But these geomorphs, man, like that is, in my opinion, that is like the bread and butter of this kit. And for me, well worth the price. So if you want to see me actually put those together at some point, like obviously not all of them, but if you want to see me try to create a random dungeon using those, let me know in the comments below. And if I get enough interest, then that's something I can definitely look at. Right now, like I said, I'm still kind of in collector mode, so I don't want to do any of that just yet. But if there's enough demand, I will definitely see what I can do there. Overall, like I said, I think this is a pretty solid product, especially for people that are newer to the hobby. I definitely recommend it. I think it's got some great stuff on there. The game aids are fantastic, and it's well worth the price in my opinion. So it's definitely worth checking out. And if you're interested, definitely go to your local game store if you have one and inquire there about getting this in. So anyway, let me know in the comments below, what were some of your favorite dungeon encounters that you've ever gone through in your past, either as a player playing through them or as a dungeon master running them for your group. Just let me know what some of your favorite encounters or like dungeon memories might be. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.